So I used to be an evangelical, but I had to leave because of what they call the gospel. And I know this video is going to get a lot of hate, so just hang in there. Hi, I'm Jeremy. I'm a deep skeptic, also a pastor. So when I was growing up in the evangelical church, I was told that the word gospel meant good news and that the story of Jesus was good news to everybody. I still believe that. The problem is that what they meant by gospel was just way too small. So I remember the first time I was given a definition of what the gospel was. It was in a fellowship hall of the little church that I was growing up in Florida. And the pastor said that you could remember what it was with an acrostic using the word gospel. And that the acrostic was, God offered sinful people eternal life. God offered sinful people eternal life. And I mean, basically, the idea is that every single person on earth is going to hell. And by hell, they mean burning in fire for eternity or something worse. And that the good news was that everybody was going to hell first. That was the first point of the good news. That's not good news. Like, I got good news for you. You're going to burn for eternity. But of course, that's not the end of the gospel. The end of the gospel is that God offers all of those people who are going to burn for eternity eternal life if they will believe in God and Jesus and serve them with their lives. Oh, and try to stop sinning, that too. And while the pastor did say that that meant that you tried to be a better person in this life, ultimately the real reward, what eternal life was, is getting out of hell so that you could go to heaven for forever when you die. I'll be honest, heaven sounds like a pretty good thing, and at the end of the day, the goal was to get people to say a prayer, the prayer of salvation. It was like a 4-sentence prayer that he taught us in that little fellowship hall in that little church in Florida. As a middle schooler, it seemed pretty good. But the more life I lived, the smaller that became. Because while maybe it saves you from eternal fire, which is another video altogether, it ultimately does very little in this world. And it seems a pretty small good news to tell people that actually begins with some really bad news. And it doesn't match with the Jesus story. That may be the biggest thing. When you look at what Jesus said, Jesus didn't spend a lot of time telling people that they were burning for forever and that they needed to say this magic 4-sentence prayer so that they could go to heaven. That kind of wasn't his thing. So I know what you're wondering, what's the bigger thing, right? If I still believe there's good news to be had, what is it? I think the best summary comes from Jesus. In Luke chapter 4, he says he came to bring good news to the poor, release to the captives, recovery of sight to the blind, and to set the oppressed free. That is pretty good news. But in the whole God offered sinful people eternal life, there's nothing about dealing with poverty or fighting back against systemic oppression or, healing people. None of that is in that gospel. It got to the point where if religion was just going to be about getting people to say some prayer so that they don't go to hell and go to heaven, it just seemed too small. It seemed insignificant, and it seemed like not something that was really worth using your life on, because who knew if that was even a real thing? But when you think about working on the poverty that kills people all over the world because of lack of access to healthcare or food, when you talk about systemic oppression and fighting back against the forces that are trying to remove rights from women and queer people and people of color, like, using your life for that and your religion sort of helping you find that greater purpose, that was worth it. That was a gospel that was worth using some of your life on. And so I got to a place where I realized I just had to leave the small gospel of evangelicalism for the big gospel of Jesus.